I can hear you just fine,
All
Commissioner
right,
McCauley.
super cool. So all three commissioners are present. And so we are going to start with, let's see, how about our advisory committee meeting schedules? Our next BIAC meeting regarding the airport is Tuesday, September 8th at 5 p.m. It'll be at the GA Conference Center at the airports. Our Technical Advisory Committee is also meeting that day, September the 8th at 9:30 a.m. And our Marina Advisory Group, Tuesday, September 13th, 6 p.m., and it'll be right here in this room. All right, so let's start with our public comment. Anybody here to talk?
We don't have anyone signed up yet for public
Anybody want
comment.
to say anything during the public comment at all? Nothing? Rants, raves? Okay. All right, we're going to move right to our consent agenda. And Diane?
A motion to approve consent agenda items A through H.
All right. Any quick discussion? Let's start with Commissioner Briscoe.
No, I don't have any discussion on this.
Okay, cool. Commissioner Robbins?
I have nothing except to make a note, because I'm going to discuss it later, that in G, on the kiosk at Bellwether, the rent for that, how many square feet did I just see it was here? Anyway, they're paying $15,000 a year for 800 square feet, was it? Or did I see what that was here?
Hang on, we got
Anyway,
one sec. You got a quick comment on that one? Yeah, go ahead,
It's
please.
867 square feet, and it does meet the rental revenue standards. 867
square feet,
Yes.
15,000 a year.
Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you.
All right, that's it?
That's it.
All right, I have nothing at all. So all in favor of the consent agenda, say aye.
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 All right, Commissioner Briscoe's with the aye. Are you hearing him on the audio over there? Okay, great. All right, we're going to move straight to our action items. And Shirley McPherson. Go ahead, Diane.
A motion by the Port Commission authorizing the Executive Director to execute the following documents on or before September 15, 2016, in conjunction with the closing of a transaction transferring substantially all the assets of Redden Marine Supply Incorporated to England Marine Supply Company. Extension and modification of harbor land lease between the Port of Bellingham and Patsy A. Radisich, Kenneth J. Quinn, and Alan R. Shabaya, a partnership doing business as Harbor Enterprises, and a consent to assignment of sublease agreement between the Port of Bellingham, Redden Marine Supply Incorporated, and England Marine Supply Company.
All right, thanks, Diane. Go ahead, Shirley.
Thank you very much, Diane. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Commissioner Briscoe, can you hear me okay?
Yes, Shirley, I can hear you just fine.
Great, thank you. So before I start my presentation to the Commission, I want to introduce you to some folks in your audience. The first is well known to all of us, and it's Randy Shabaya, the owner of Red Marine. He's been the owner of Red Marine for, gosh, I think about 35 years. Red Marine has operated on our waterfront for about 50 years. And Randy really is an icon on our waterfront. So before I bring forward the transaction to the Commission, I want to recognize Randy and really thank him for his support of the marine trades community. So if Randy if you could just stand so that we could recognize you for that. So what I want to tell the Commission before I give you some highlights of the transaction in front of you is that we have England Marine here today as well. England Marine, the president of England Marine, Kurt England, is here, and if you could stand so the Commission knows who you are. Thank you very much. The CFO of England Marine, Jeremy Davis, is here as well. And welcome to you, Jeremy, and welcome to England Marine. So a week ago Friday, Randy Shabaya called my office to say that Red Marine planned to sell substantially all of Redden's assets to England Marine, and it would be done through a court proceeding. So Given the timing of our commission agendas, it was important to all the parties that we bring forward something to the commission today, given that the courts are going to hear this transaction and hopefully approve it on August 26th, which is prior to any other meeting that the commission has. So this is not an uncommon business transaction, but it is really time sensitive for all of the parties. Just to give you a little bit of background, the commission may recall that the port has a ground lease agreement with Harbor Enterprises for the corner of Bellwether and Rotor, and that has been in effect since 1983. It's been on a holdover status for about 8 years, which has taken that lease into a month-to-month tenancy. So one of the actions we're asking you to do is to extend that ground lease, which is held by Harbor Enterprises, Patsy Radisich, Kenneth Quinn, and Randy Shabaya, who hold the ground lease, and they own the building. They sublease to Rudden Marine. So we're going to ask you to extend that lease for 6 months, and what that will do will allow all of the parties, Anglo Marine, the port, and Rudden, to align our interests and come back to the commission with what I hope to be a much longer-term lease, subject to the court's approval. I've done a lot of due diligence on Anglo Marine, and I will tell you they are an uptown company. They have a strong marine supply. They're a strong marine supply company with 11 locations spread amongst Washington, Oregon, Northern California, Arizona, and Montana. And at the table with all these, with both entities, it feels like they have a really good relationship. And I think they had a relationship before this transaction occurred. So given the August 26th court deadline, we're proposing the following actions. One, again, is to extend the harbor land lease for 6 months and increase the rent from $11.26 to $15 a square foot. We're asking the commission to approve the consent to assignment of the sublease agreement with Red Marine to Anglo Marine. And then we hope in the next 6 months, once we align everyone's interest, to come back to the commission with a long-term lease with Anglo Marine. And before the commission acts on this transaction, I will answer any questions. I want to introduce Kurt England, and he's going to come up and talk to the commission a little bit about Anglo Marine.
Good afternoon. She mentioned Kurt England, England Marine Supply. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for commission and staff and legal counsel for hearing us in short notice. We really appreciate that. Brief history in our company. Started by my grandfather back in 1944 in Astoria, Oregon, mainly supplying commercial fishermen. Over the years, we moved into Ilwaco and Westport, Washington, down the coast into Coos Bay, Oregon, Newport, Oregon, Crescent City, California, and Eureka, California. And over those years, we also added on recreational fishing gear and broadened our inventory to more general boating. Also along that time, back in the early 80s, we acquired a wholesale distribution outlet in Portland, Oregon that specialized more in recreational boat parts and pieces and called them boat dealers and whatnot. So we have that location, and it has a satellite located in Missoula, Montana. And then we also started a like business down in Phoenix, Arizona. So we kind of cover different portions of the West, both coastal, recreational and commercial fishing, plus inland wholesale distribution. Currently, we have roughly 135 employees working for us, spread out. And, some of our locations are 3-4 persons up to 40, 50. So we're kind of a small company, big company, all rolled up into one. So we're looking forward to the addition of Red Marine. We think it's a good fit for us, and we hope to be a good fit for Whatcom County and keep things, as much as we can, business as usual. So if you have any questions,
Dan?
I don't have any.
Commissioner Briscoe, questions for Kurt?
No, I do not.
All right, I only have one. So there's some folks at work at, actually maybe more than one, surprisingly. The folks at work at Redden, are you going to be able to keep them on, or what are you thinking with that?
yeah, our intention is to keep every single one of them.
All right,
And
cool.
then we need, over time, there's positions we need to add back to the company, so we hope to strengthen it with both personnel and financial.
All right, that's good. That's good to know. Thank you for that. Also, Red Marine had a long-term sort of plan for the location here in Bellingham that got set aside. Now it's obviously changing. Would love to have you folks chat with Rob if you're thinking similar thoughts in regards to that. I'm sure he can fill you in, and Shirley can certainly fill you in on what that was. And we were kind of excited about doing that, and it's sad to see it not happen, Randy. But I think that if there is a possibility for that, then with England, then we'd certainly like to pursue that as well. And then the last thing, I wasn't aware of you folks being down in California. Are you familiar with a commercial fishing app called Fishline?
I'm not familiar with that one.
Okay, all right, I'll follow up with you later on that one. But,
Okay.
Okay, cool, great. That's it for us, I guess, right on that? That's
it.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much, Kurt.
Any questions for me, Commission?
I have a couple. One, is Red Marine current with their rent with the Port of Bellingham?
Yes, I believe they are.
And, okay, then that solves my second question, because my second question is if they weren't, was England in the receivership going to pick up the debt or not? But if they're not in the rears, no problem. I won't ask the second question.
We expect Red to pay through August and the assignment to occur September 1.
Very good. Welcome to the community. I assume your Phoenix is your distribution center, since there's not a lot of water around there. And your vacation spot. Good. I have nothing further.
Anything from you, Commissioner Briscoe?
No.
Oh, all right. We're making this easy today. In that case, all in favor of moving forward with this, say aye.
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 Thank you for that. Thank you, Shirley. All right. I'm sure we'll be talking much more with England in the future. So. Okay, next action item is a little airport-related business. And so, Diane, want to read that?
Authorize the Executive Director to accept FAA AIP Grant Number 3-53-0005-054. Offer in the amount of $450,000 to prepare the FAA-required Airport Master Plan and AGIS/EALP planning study, and executed professional services agreement with AECOM, or AECOM Corporation, to perform the planning study in the amount of $463,483 by approving a budget amendment increase in the capital budget line item number 47 from $50,000 to $465,000, with FAA Grant 54 funding 90% of the cost of the PSA.
Sunil.
Thank you, Diane. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Sunil Harman, Aviation. The item before you is really, although it has a series of tiered approval actions, is really a decision to proceed with a new master plan for Bellingham International Airport. So if you'll indulge me, I'd like to walk you through a really brief presentation. In front of you, you'll see two graphs. The first graph is the Federal Aviation Administration's terminal area forecast that was done in 2011 for Bellingham International Airport. On the left side of that graph, in the vertical column, are a series of numbers that represent enplanements, boardings, or embarkations. That's the key metric that the FAA uses in defining the airport's category. So we're deemed a small hub category. It also uses that metric in assigning airport improvement program funds, as well as in verifying the type of improvements that we're going to use federal funds for in meeting long-term demand requirements. A master plan is typically done with a 20-year horizon. So the current master plan for the airport was conducted in 2011. The dotted line that you see, the vertical dotted line, that originates in the period that's 2011 represents when the study was commenced. The study had a forecast period of 20 years ending in 2031 and projected 1,145,989 boarding passengers in 2031. That was a 19.4% increase over the FAA's forecast of 959,718 that you see in the green box at that graph. So there was a difference of roughly 186,000 boarding passengers. Now, actual conditions, when you look at where we are today, in 2016, so if I were to draw a line from 2016 and over, we're not very far from where the original FAA forecast began in 2011. In fact, if you were to look at those numbers today, we haven't significantly grown, and we find that the forecast was overly optimistic. In the graph on the right side, you'll see FAA's forecast now for commencing in 2015 for that same period, and it reflects a negative 41% rate, or 394,655 enplaning passengers. That is a significant divergence from what we assumed in our master plan. The FAA's current forecast, when compared to the master plan, is 50%, 50.7% off, or 580,926 enplanements. Going to the next slide, you see the diverging projections between the FAA's terminal area forecast and the master plan. In the year 2016, the master plan predicted 710,000 passenger enplanements or boardings. We're actually going to complete 2016 at around 413,000 boardings. That actually represents a 42% from actual condition. So this is 42% negative. And with the FAA's terminal area forecast, 39%. Now, as you go out into the future in 2021, that grows to 41%, 48%, and 50%. Because forecasts set the purpose and need for future planning, this sort of divergence, anything that exceeds in the negative direction 10%, is suspect. And so the FAA has in its requirements indicated that we should proceed with a new master plan and has supported funding that effort. In the last slide, I wanted to illustrate to you the actual conditions. So here's the actual condition. We saw a peak in 2013 when Frontier, Alaska, and Allegiant were all year-round airlines at the airport of a little less than 600,000 enplanements. There was a decline of 8.2% when Frontier left, not due to any issues with Bellingham, but because they didn't want to hub out of Denver. They wanted to operate as a point-to-point airline. And we saw an 8.2% reduction. Then from 14 to 15, we saw a 16.3% reduction, largely because Alaska became a seasonal airline and discontinued year-round service, and Allegiant cut back significantly in available seat miles. We're predicting, for our budget purposes, an 8% decline between 15 and 16. In actuality, we'll end the year with a 9.3% decline of a little less than 5,000 additional boarding passengers. Cumulatively, we've lost 33% or 33.8% of our market share. That's a substantial hit over a 3-year period of time. There's a significant amount of uncertainty with the Canada effect. when there's going to be stabilization in the market, because we primarily serve a discretionary marketplace, recreational travelers. Most of our destinations are discretionary. The majority of our market share is Canadian travelers, cross-border travelers. So I would recommend to you to approve the award of contract to AECOM for a new master plan, which will look ahead 20 years and rationalize the planning. Here to forward, it's a year-long effort, accept the FAA's grant. So we're only required to pay 10% of the overall effort as a local share, and approve the amendment to the contract. With that, I'll turn it over to you for questions.
Commissioner Briscoe, questions? Commissioner Briscoe?
Sorry, I had to mute. I had an airplane there. No, I do not have any questions for Sunil. Thank you for that presentation.
All right. Commissioner Robbins?
Yes, I had a question, a couple of them. One, I thought we did a master plan. Didn't we have a public hearing and do a master plan after 2011 when I was on the commission?
The master plan that you have in place today, viewed as the current master plan, though unacceptable from this sort of divergence in forecast, was initiated in 2011 and adopted in June 2016. It was a rather long effort. It was a time of great optimism, both from the FAA standpoint as well as the local forecast. The trajectory, as you saw, was straight up. Nobody predicted the market discipline that the
I
airlines.
understand that. My question is, when did we approve the last master plan?
June 2014.
2014, okay. 2014. And so we need to, I understand why we have to write a whole new plan, and it certainly makes sense. Do we have to have the public hearing and go through all of that all over again? I mean,
Yes.
that huge document, we start from scratch
Yes, sir.
after we just approved it 2 years ago?
Yes, because the conditions will change, the underlying purpose and need will change. The recommendations that came out of that previous document will change. We're not going to see the level of activity that was originally forecast in that master plan.
And I certainly understand that. Now, if we, for some reason, 2 years from now, get another major airline in here, are we going to have to write another master plan at that time because it's going to
No.
be such a higher amount?
Typically, master plans for an airport of our size are done every 15 years or so. This is definitely an unusual situation.
And it wouldn't be unusual if it went back to that amount,
It would not be.
okay? That's the only question I had.
So, Sunil, because we just had this master plan adopted, and ever since the adoption, actually, I think we were going down even when we were going through the adoption process. So we were already diverging from the forecast. But the FAA is driving a lot of the numbers in the forecast first before then we do the master plan. Is that correct?
Not necessarily. We use the FAA's forecast along with Boeing's forecast and regional indicators as a basis of comparison to the master plan that we create for the airport. So there was about there was so much optimism that there was almost a 200,000 enplaning passenger increase, 186,000 over what the FAA had forecast for 2011. I think, the tendency in forecasting and an error is forecasting is assuming that you're continuously going to go up, even with a trend line. I think you've got to rationalize it based on other factors that may not have been looked at in the previous master plan, including what sort of dynamics are playing in the airline industry, the marketplace. We see now a great deal of capacity discipline. We hear from the airlines that coalesced into a handful of airlines saying, we're never going to be in that situation again where we'll deliver an abundance of capacity to grab market share. And then we've got to look at what the neighboring airports are doing. How much capacity are they delivering? And be much more cautionary and deliberate in preparing forecasts and also future growth scenarios.
So the news I've heard recently about the consolidation of the largest airlines, they're enjoying their profitability probably for the first time in the history of commercial aviation in this country.
Yes.
Is it, you being an insider in all this, is this the expected future of the commercial airline industry?
We all predicted that if the trend continued back when we were looking at this 10 years ago, that it would coalesce into a few oligopoly airlines that would all basically behave the same way, provide the same services, charge the same fees for services. You've seen airlines this last year make $55 billion in just add-on ancillary fees. They've hit upon a model that is going to be difficult to change now.
Okay, because that's really important for us, because I feel like we're kind of on a master planning treadmill. And I think folks that have been watching this will say, you just had a master plan and it's wrong. What's wrong with you people? You can't, well, I'm sure there's probably a lot of pejorative words to use here, but when we move forward here, what's the likelihood that our new master plan is going to be something that's good for 10 or 15 years as normally expected?
I think there's a lot more stability given the few airlines that remain in the airline industry. The difficulty in entering the market and capitalizing, you're always going to have niche carriers that provide service to, but in terms of large cap airlines, you've got the four, Delta, United, American, and Southwest. It's highly unlikely that anyone else will be able to enter that arena. The types of carriers that airports like ours serve are niche carriers. They're point-to-point carriers. In fact, the larger air carriers, the four major ones, try not to serve airports within 2 hours drive time from a major hub. So our conversations with them is, their feeling is you're within a reasonable drive time to Seattle. Mm-hmm. And we're investing several $billion in Seattle. We've also looked at Vancouver, and there's a major capital program there. So I think you'll see a much more rational master plan without the euphoria that was factored into the previous master plan with respect to terminal expansion and so on.
The rate traffic's going, maybe it'll take more than 2 hours here.
Yes, except you've got transit alternatives. There's that rail line that'll go all the way north to Linwood. So we're looking at some erosion of our North Seattle market share. There's also a new terminal development planned at Payne Field. So we're going to have to look at competing airports and how much capacity they're delivering in developing our assumptions and forecasts.
Can you put the graph back up for a moment, please?
Yes. This one?
No, the other one, that one.
Yeah.
So were we, after we did our remodel of our airport, did we ever break even?
I don't think so.
It depends on how you define break even, but at the cash flow line, the answer would be no. From an operating perspective, we contributed to capital and to debt service, but from a cash flow perspective, no, the capital exceeded the cash.
And so what is it now? How much are we losing now compared to what it was?
It depends each year because we have such a capital-intensive operation out there that one year you may do a lot more capital than you do in another year. But I think if you average the last 3 years, you're probably $1.5 million
a year.
Yeah.
And so when it drops down here in 2018, there, what's our forecast? We'll be losing then.
We presented to you at our retreat a projection of about 750,000 to 800,000 minimum a year until we recover, which is around 2021, if we don't adjust any other rates and charges. So one of the items that will be coming before you, in fact, I've already corresponded with the airlines, is an increase in rates. Because what you have is a brand new facility designed to serve 1.6 million boarding passengers. You're boarding a little bit more than 400,000. These are actually the embarkation numbers. So something's got to be adjusted to pay for the O&M and operations of the facility. And we can't continue to extend to the airlines the 2 years of non-increases that they've enjoyed, because they've continued to cut back on available seat miles. Alaska is the most recent example. It eliminated the Honolulu route, which was 3 times weekly, to once a week with a Kona. So in essence, we lost 2 turns per week on a 737. And so we do have to impose additional rates and charges to recover some of our losses.
Sunil's done a good job of that, of working with the airlines and proposing these rate increases to them. But the biggest effect I think we've had here in the early years when the passenger enplanements were dropping, we were pre-committed to certain capital projects that were already underway and had contracts been let. So we had to finish those to the conclusion, and that's why you had such a steeper loss at the cash flow line. But Sunil's done a good job of reducing the amount of capital projects we're doing out there, and that should reduce the losses a little bit.
But a couple things. When you said 1.2 million passengers, but that was 600,000 enplanements.
Correct.
Well,
We really dropped from
yes.
600,000 to 400.
Yes. Well, the design capacity of the facility is 1.6 million passengers,
Passengers, not enplanements.
not enplanements.
But
It's
that's
800,000.
Yeah. Okay.
800.
And so right now, if we're losing $1 million, and it looks like it's going to drop here for the next 2 years, and our budget was 700,000, I guess that's where my question is.
Well, that's the adjustments that I'm proposing in the rates and charges going forward.
Okay.
So we can stem some of those losses. We're obviously not going to be able to recover all of those
Right.
from a market standpoint. Yeah.
Bobby, you have anything to jump in on right now?
No, I'm still listening.
All right. So, Neil, one of my big concerns is that we moved forward on the terminal expansion a few years ago, and paying that bond is, pretty critical. So, as we're going through this, I definitely want to know where's the absolute bottom line where we're looking like we're going to be in some kind of trouble, because some of the losses are troubling, but it's not the end of the world, because we certainly don't want to be backfilling too much at the airport, because it's just going to draw everything off the rest of the organization.
So you make a good point. The bonds that were issued for the terminal expansion were passenger facility charge backed bonds. So every enplanement that you lose, you lose some passenger facility charge that would be associated with that ticket. But from a bond forecast standpoint, a bond forecast is much more conservative than a master plan forecast. And this forecast that you see here 5 years ahead, that's an ultra conservative forecast that's based on staff's evaluation of market conditions and really no recovery in the Canadian marketplace over 5 years. So it's very conservative. I don't think you're in the danger zone unless you drop below about 350,000 annual enplanements, and then you've got to start worrying about it.
And just to add on to that or correct something Sunil said, we modeled passenger facility charges to cover the debt service, but we pledged the entire revenues of the port. So there's a difference there. I think that when we look at our debt service, we've got a couple of years that are a little rough ahead of us. But then the way our debt service works, we have other bonds that are retiring 3 years from now that'll increase our capacity or reduce our debt service load. So we won't be in as much trouble as we are for the next couple of years.
So, Senator Murray was in town recently, and Rob pointedly brought this up with her and her staff about the passenger facility charges. There's not a lot of appetite in D.C. to raise that, which makes no sense to me whatsoever, because it's not taxes. If you've got your ear to the ground or you hear anything about that, certainly would like to add one more voice to the chorus of let's have some PFC charge increases, or allow us to anyway.
Well, both the Airports Council International and the American Association of Airport Executives, and I've served on both boards, as a group have coalesced together to promote an increase in the passenger facility charge, at least indexed to the inflation rate, because it hasn't been raised since 1994. And the indexed rate is about $8. While there's been no appetite to pass any legislation in Washington over the last few years, it looks like with a new administration now, with this emphasis on infrastructure to stimulate the economy, airports probably will come out ahead. And it's not a tax, it's a user charge. So people that use the airport pay to improve the airport.
Awesome. Even $2 would be.
That would be a
That would
significant
be
improvement
huge.
for,
Yeah, $2 isn't too much.
I don't think you'll have to pledge ports-backed funds. I think this forecast still illustrates that you're well within the capacity.
So these numbers are your staff's forecast?
My forecast,
Okay,
yes.
what's the FAA thinking about right now? Did we see that one already?
The FAA's forecast is a little bit more bullish than ours in terms of activity levels, but remember, we have to plan your 5-year budget. So these are the budget forecasts that we used in developing.
Great, I
5-year
like
budget.
that. Like, what's the worst case scenario? I'd prefer to plan for that. Because I know that in the last master plan, when I asked, can we please plan for a disaster? And the answer was no, we have to plan for this growth, which, okay, I get it, but, it'd be nice to know what our plan B is if there is a disaster without a new plan, but.
But that was the FAA that was
Yeah.
pushing
Yeah.
a higher amount. We were trying to say, no, it's not going to be that good. As much as I hate to do a whole nother master plan, it is important to look at this $465,000. We only pay 10% of that.
Right.
But we're going to have a lot of staff time involved again in putting this together, an immense amount. But I think obviously it's necessary.
And our implementation schedule is 12 months. This is going to be much faster. It's a 1-year process.
The last one took 3 years, this one will take a year.
A year.
Why the difference?
You've got a better defined scope of work. You've got a great deal of motivation both on the side of the FAA and staff. And I think you've got more experienced staff in developing master plans.
Okay, all good? Commissioner Briscoe, anything further for Sunil?
No, I think he explained it very well. I don't like to have to do another master plan either, but it seems inevitable. So hopefully this one will last us 15 years.
The good news is, though, if things go crazy good again, we can just change the date on the old one.
If things go that crazy good, your design capacity is 1.6 million passengers at a level of service A, which is the highest level of service. Airports like LaGuardia and JFK routinely operate at level of service D. So if we were to reduce the level of service in our terminal, crowded, longer wait times and queues, you can serve 3 million passengers. So you've already got the ability to double the capacity in the existing. I don't see Bellingham needing additional terminal expansion till well beyond 2035.
Absolutely. All right, Commissioner Robbins?
Well, and it is important that we change the master plan, general aviation, that'll affect us well on some of the things we were doing. And so I think we've got to do it.
Well, and another nice thing about this is with the old master plan, we've got some ideas that came out from that regarding the entire airport and how it operates and where things might need to grow or move in the future. So that's, I guess, not a complete wasted effort. It's useful, I know, for the commission standpoint to sort of think long-term about where things might need to go and what investments might need to be made, so.
Yeah, what's important in this master plan, we're going to have to mitigate some certification requirements that the FAA now is mandating. So there's the runway safety area issue that we need to address. If it needs to be completely mitigated, you have to do the master plan for the FAA to fund it. The runway safety area is so critical that at certain airports, a good example is Monterey, which is a smaller airport than ours. The FAA funded a $58 million project to mitigate a perceived safety issue.
Oh, and then the one final thing, the solar, this is going to get included?
We have a sustainability component in here. It doesn't specifically call out solar, but solar and other conservation and sustainability measures will be evaluated as part of this.
Fantastic. Awesome. Be nice to generate some electricity off of otherwise wasted space, so.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Lots of empty rooftop that can be used.
Absolutely. Commissioner Briscoe, anything further?
No.
Okay, all right. All right, so all in favor of this, say aye.
Aye.
Sounds like 3 votes there. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sunil.
Thank you.
All right, so we've got a quick little new lease coming up for the Community Boating Center. And Diane?
A motion by the Port Commission approving a harbor land lease, including lease of DNR, or Department of Natural Resources property, between the Port of Bellingham and Bellingham Bay Community Boating Center Incorporated for property located at 555 Harris Avenue, Bellingham, Washington. A motion by the Port Commission approving a license to operate between the Port of Bellingham and Bellingham Bay Community Boating Center Incorporated for the Fairhaven Boat Launch and Float. And item C, a motion by the Port Commission approving a license to operate between the Port of Bellingham and Bellingham Bay Community Boating Center Incorporated for the Fairhaven Moorage Facilities.
All right, Brady.
Good afternoon, Commission. For the record, my name is Brady Scott, Marine Trades Real Estate Representative for the Port of Bellingham. As Diane McLean just mentioned, this action is in regards to a new lease and 2 license to operate agreements with the Bellingham Bay Community Boating Center. The Community Boating Center is a nonprofit organization that provides small boat instruction and education to the public, including the storage or dry moorage and rental of small boats and watercraft in Fairhaven. Here in the audience today is Steve Walker, Executive Director of the Community Boating Center. CBC has been operating on the existing site since 2007. The new lease before you today would provide an additional initial 10-year lease term with 3 10-year renewal options. The premises under lease would include the upland parcel that's located between the Coast Guard dock and the boat launch. The lease would also provide for a first right of lease offer for use of the waterward parcel. The 2 license to operate agreements are for CBC to operate and manage the Fairhaven Boat Launch Facility and the linear moorage and buoy facilities on a seasonal basis. CBC would act as the customer liaison, provide limited custodial work, charge moorage rates, and work closely with the port on managing those facilities. The term of those license to operates are seasonal with auto renewal and 90-day termination notice by either party. The port staff recommends approval of these 3 actions. Let me know if you have any questions.
All right, Commissioner Robbins.
I have a couple questions. How much are they paying in rent today?
They're paying approximately $900
A month.
a month.
And under the new rent?
The new rent would be about $140. I got that right.
And how many square feet are we talking? We're talking 16,000 square feet, is that correct?
The premises. Yes, that's correct. That sounds about right.
Okay. And what are their winter hours?
That's a good question. I maybe need to defer to Steve on the hours of operations.
Steve, do you mind coming up to the microphone?
The center operates year-round. The marina is available for patrons 24/7 every day of the year. So the center operates every day. The educational programs run through the boating season, although we've got some grant money to do some after-school educational programs with young people that are now starting our season before the academic year ends. So late March, potentially. We're doing programs in April and May.
So in January, there's as much, you're open just as much as you are in August?
For the marina, absolutely. I mean,
Well, for the docks, anyone can go use the dock.
No, for our marina, for our dry moorage marina, it's open. I mean, certainly people tend to boat less in the.
But it's staffed, the same number of staff and every?
No, we increase our staff during the boating season for our educational programs and our direct operations to, for rentals.
Okay, and how about in the winter? Would you have much of a staff in the winter, or is it all, everyone gets a key to unlock their?
The marina tenants are not staff, they're tenants, so, but we do have, our educational coordinator is funded throughout the year so that she can do evaluation and planning and hiring and for the upcoming season.
And your educational season is from when to when?
Well, that's what I was saying, it's expanding because of these grant programs.
What is it now?
So it's April to September.
Okay.
Yeah, October, actually. We're doing some programs now in October. Yeah.
When we, the last rent reduction we did, we set a policy that we would ask anytime there's a rent reduction to see some financial numbers, and you sent this out to me, and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. The other thing to note too is that we're actually leasing less square footage than we were previously. So that's another reason that the rent is reduced.
How many square feet were you renting previously?
There was another 22,000 square feet of another aquatic parcel that we have that we're not renewing the lease on.
So you had
Primarily
22,000 square feet, or 2,200, did you say you're reducing it?
The waterward parcel that he's referencing is 26,000 square feet. That's the parcel that they would have the option for. That's coming out of their lease going forward.
Okay.
So if my math is correct, we're going from about a 42,000 square foot lease down to a 16,000 square foot lease.
Steve, could you, for folks who don't know, can you describe the mission of the boating center and sort of kind of encapsulate what exactly that
absolutely.
happens there?
Our mission is to foster small watercraft education, access, and safe recreation on Bellingham Bay. That's our mission, and we do it through the provision of educational programs and marina for small watercraft. And then we rent the vessels in our fleet to the general public when they're not being used for educational purposes. So sailboats and kayaks and rowing shells and rowboats and paddleboards.
Sailboats, what is the boating center at for sailboats right now?
We have about a dozen boats, and because we're a small watercraft educational organization, we cap the length of those boats at 26 feet. That's what both the state and the federal government use as a benchmark for watercraft definitions. And so we have 3 J24 sailboats. We've got some couple of Capri 14-foot sailboats, a Ranger 16, some Sunfish, a Force 5, a Laser, a variety of small boats. We use those mostly in our youth camps.
Are they kept at except for the J24s, are they kept at the boating center on premise?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
The J24s aren't kept there?
They're currently moored in the mooring field.
Okay. And the big revenue you have, the $80,000 is in rental revenue. Is that basically from kayaks that you rent?
Kayaks and sailboats and paddleboards and rowboats.
How many kayaks do you store there? Last time I was down there, it looked like there were well over 100.
There's 220 boats in the marina, and about 78 of them are ours. It varies from day to day. Sometimes we get donations, people who want to support our program.
When you say in the marina, you mean the ones out on buoys? Is that what you're counting?
No, in the marina, in the leasehold.
The dry
storage.
You have 220 boats in dry storage?
Yes.
Okay. And how many of those are kayaks?
Well over, probably about 140.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe 150.
If I want to store my kayak there and go down and take it out, what's it cost a month for me to store my kayak?
$25 a month.
Okay.
Sure.
Rob's going to put an image of the voting center for folks up. We can refer to that. While Rob's doing that, Commissioner Briscoe, do you have some questions for Steve while he's up here?
Well, my mission of the voting center, you covered that one. That was one of my questions. And also the buoy lease they referred to, is that in front of the Fairhaven Marine Industrial Park? Is that part of that area, or what were you referring to there?
Yeah, the moorage field on the license to operate is the linear moorage, and I believe there's about 8 or 9 mooring buoys offshore in front of FMIP.
Okay, very good. Now, can anyone come in and rent those buoys from you, or is that strictly for the voting center, or how does that work?
The moorage field is a port-owned facility that would be operated by CBC, has been in the past, and that would be, arrangement would be renewed here.
Okay, thank you.
There aren't a lot of facilities that are port-owned that are managed privately. In this case, the moorage field is managed by the Community Boating Center, although it's all owned by, well, not the water, of course, but the equipment is owned by the Port of Bellingham. Is correct?
Yeah, the license to operate would, for the moorage facility, provides CBC to do certain aspects of the management. We're still involved in maintenance and that sort of thing.
Right, but the facility itself, so the floats, any kind of a buoy, all those are all port-owned.
That's correct.
Facilities. All right. Okay.
I guess what I wrestle with as I went over all of this, 16,000 square feet rented it at $100 a month seems so ridiculously low.
It's a little bit more than the adjacent property, but
When we look at the lease we're going to do after yours, we're doing 12,000 square feet, and they're at $1,000. I think it's going to be $1,000 a month. We just did 800, as I pointed out earlier, 800 square feet at what was that, 20,000 a year?
I think, yeah, and the big difference is that these are state-owned aquatic lands. These are not port lands. The port owns its own property and holds fee title to those lands, and like any landlord can rent at rates that, are reflective of the marketplace, whereas the community boating center is owned or is located on state-owned aquatic land that's owned by all the citizens of the state, and the rate structure is defined in the RCWs and the Aquatic Lands Management Act. So it's not really a market-driven situation.
Well, it might not be, but from a taxpayer standpoint, a taxpayer looks at this and says, holy cow, I mean, I rented 20,000 square feet and it was $90,000 a year. Yeah, here we are at 16,000 square feet at $100 a month.
Sure, I appreciate that. And I understand how people who don't understand it could misperceive it, but I also know that there's other state-owned aquatic lands that are rented for half as much as what the community boating center is paying. So
really, 16,000 square feet at $50 a month?
This works out to 10 cents a square foot. There's other state-owned aquatic lands that the port is managing where the rent is 5 cents a square foot. So we're paying twice what the lowest aquatic land leases are under your management.
I guess as I look at, take it out of the square foot and look at it from a revenue standpoint, any business doing $178,000 a year in revenue is going to pay somewhere between 10 and 20% for a cost of a lease. And their labor is going to run around 30%. The labor is much higher here, and the rent is so much lower. I mean, why don't they just give it to you free? Why even charge you $100 a month?
We're open to that.
I'm sure you are. I'm sure.
I mean, we're a nonprofit charitable organization with a mission to serve the public, and the more our overhead can be reduced, the more services we can provide to the public.
So
we
can
pay.
I would just like.
Go ahead,
I'd like to
Chris.
interject. I'd like to interject here. There's more about this than the money. This is a service to the community, to our youth, to our children, to learn how to boat on Bellingham Bay. And to me, that if we have to give it to them at 5 cents or 4 cents or 2 cents, I think the future of our children in Whatcom County is well worth the investment the port makes here.
So, Steve, as a nonprofit, can you describe what the federal requirements are, have been placed on the Community Boating Center to provide the whatever services that you're providing? What is it that because this is a federal status, right?
We're registered with the Secretary of State here in Washington as a charitable nonprofit, and our federal IRS tax deductible charitable status comes from our presence as an educational institution. That's what.
Okay.
And
then within the description of educational provider, there are certain activities that you have to engage in to maintain your nonprofit status. Is there a percentage of business activity where you can not necessarily provide education, but maybe
you can generate revenue as long as those activities are related to your mission and your purpose.
Okay, so in regards to the CBC, what happens to the revenues that you, like for example, the storage of the kayaks, which on this image takes place almost exclusively within the footprint of the buildings near the top. Is that correct?
Well, a lot of it's used to maintain our fleet. I don't know if any of you ever owned a boat, but it's not an inexpensive enterprise. We own 78 of them, so you can imagine.
So by leasing some storage space for the kayaks and maybe a few other small boats, that money has to get rolled back into the programs.
Yeah, absolutely. We use it for wages. We actually pay extremely high labor and industry insurance because of our status as a marina. That's, it's up there with logging and mining and some of those other industries for accidents. Knock on wood, we've been accident free, but we still pay those high insurance costs. And then we pay thousands of dollars a year for liability insurance. People are concerned about activities on the water, and we manage the risk there, but we still pay significant overhead and insurance costs.
I've got a question regarding the aquatic lands, and Brady, you may be able to answer this one. So I do believe even that railroad there is on state aquatic lands. The building to the left, the warehouse, that's we can see the white roof on, that's on aquatic lands. So through this conversation, I became aware that the parking area that the Coast Guard rents is paying a lower rate to park their cars than the boating center was as a nonprofit educational institution. Does this lease rate with the CBC get that property more in line with a lot of the other properties that we're managing that's DNR property?
So just to clarify, the port management area comes along the railroad tracks and includes most of this building. So that's correct. As Steve indicated, port management areas rent is based on state statute and regulation. And so there's different types of uses to determine that, whether it's a water-dependent rate or a non-water-dependent rate, depending on the type of activity and use associated with the property. And so you'll see different rates if it's a non-water dependent rate versus a water dependent rate. And so you see some of the variabilities there. I'm not, I can't recall the exact rates of, you mentioned the Coast Guard facility in there, but the rates that we arrived at with the Community Boating Center is approaching the water dependent rate. The DNR statutes allow the flexibility to negotiate non-water dependent rates, but they have to all remain above the water dependent rent calculation, which is provided for in statute. So any leases the port does on port managed property that's water dependent has to follow that prescribed formula for determining the rent.
Thank you for that.
I'm certainly not opposed to the educational component of the community boating center. And now we're going to have the sailing center, so there are going to be a lot of opportunities for folks to learn how to sail here. It's not just the community boating center. We're going to set a precedence here when there's $178,000 in revenue, and we've got a good in labor and management expenses of looks like $140,000 in labor. It just seems like the lease rent is just ridiculously low for that.
Commissioner, I think that you're looking at the financial statements that said administration on it. I believe that probably also includes their insurance costs. I think there's more than just labor in there, so I wouldn't lump that all into the labor category.
Well, it has labor and labor-related 80,000. Then it has management and general administration at 59,000.
I'm guessing that 59 includes insurance and some other
Well,
costs.
then it's got facilities expenses of 19, and I would assume that's where the insurance is.
You know, I'd have to talk to our CPA to know which category she rolled into. It's in one of those two places, I can guarantee it.
I doubt very much it would be in the management. It would probably be in the.
I think it would be in general administrative, and facilities would be more related to the repair and upkeep of the facility. We can dig into that and find out.
Okay.
Steve, something that's concerned me since this first came up was the water dependent versus non-water dependent, and I asked Rod to put this up so folks could see the facility itself. When I look at what the community boating center does, I see it as a water dependent use. The state,
people would.
I think a person looking at that. So could you describe what happens when you have a class of kids that come in on this facility, where they go and how they go there? I know Commissioner Briscoe, you can't see this, but
Well, we greet them at the front door and suit them up in wetsuits and life jackets and get the vessels out and give them an opportunity to use the facilities, and then provide some basic classroom overview, and then we, depending on what the structure of the camp is for that day, we'd be getting them into small boats to teach skills in and out of the shoreline. The best available place to get most small boats into the water is along the just south of the boat launch. It's really the only shoreline that's soft enough. It's not very soft, it's actually quite rocky, but it's the best available space to get kayaks and rowboats and paddle boards and
so these kids are going to receive some instruction, and then you're going to physically carry boats down to the launch.
Yep.
And the Department of Natural Resources still considers that a non-water dependent use, which is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Because you're carrying the boats to the water.
Yep.
You're not driving them in a car or a truck. They're not in a trailer. Well, they may be in a small trailer, but
No,
they're still hand launched.
that's right.
Okay. That's where I really, really struggled with. And Dan, I wouldn't disagree with you on some of what you said, but from a community benefit standpoint and supporting what Commissioner Briscoe said also, I see this as an asset that only the Port of Bellingham provides on the bay. It's the same as the airport when we had a museum at the airport. The only airport is the one the port's got. And when we have facilities like this where we lock, where the public has a lock on the land, essentially a monopoly, then this public benefit can only be allowed if the port allows it. And in this case, supporting the CBC and its educational component is something that the port can be a part of. And I don't have a problem at all with this being a water dependent property. And I know the rate's really low, but that's set by the state. The rates are set by the state, not by the Port of Bellingham.
That would bring the rent down to 8 cents a square foot if it were deemed to be water dependent.
We had a lot of conversations with DNR over this subject. Steve had some, I had some, Brady had some, Shirley had some.
Well, I got to interrupt for a second, and it's not about the money, because what's the difference? It's about $800 a month, right? It's more of a policy issue is really where we're going with this.
That's right. DNR was stuck on the policy and the creating of the precedent. So while we pushed hard to get them to consider this to be a water dependent, they just weren't going to get there. But what we did get them to agree to do is consider this a very unique asset and a unique use and a unique value to the community. And in the Community Voting Center, Steve and his board agreed to that, even though it is slightly higher in rent than what a water dependent would have gotten them.
Commissioner McCauley, I will let you know I do have visual on everything on YouTube here live. I'm just a few seconds or 30 seconds or so behind what's going on.
Great. All right. Is there any further discussion on this one? Commissioner Briscoe, any more points you want to make?
No, I just like to thank Steve for what he does for our young folks and teaching safety and proper use of small vessels and so on the water. Thank you.
Okay.
You bet, Bobby.
Commissioner Robbins?
Are there any other expenses that the port is going to incur with this boating center that we anticipate?
We've talked about doing a project out there, and we're going to come to you during the budget season for that, so you'll get a shot at looking at that during the upcoming budget reviews.
But we don't have any other expense other than...
Not that's called out in the lease, no.
All right. Any final thoughts, Commissioner Briscoe?
No, I'm
Okay.
fine, thank you.
Anything further?
No.
All right. So all in favor of supporting this lease, say aye. Aye.
All right.
Nay?
And opposed, 1. All right, and Commissioner Robbins has asked that we forego our 5 o'clock break. He's got a ferry to catch. So if Commissioner Briscoe, if you're not opposed to it, we could bring our Blaine Weblocker update and move it forward. Would that work for you?
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that.
Okay, now I should probably ask Adam if it works for him, because I haven't asked Adam yet. Adam, can
Are we
do that?
concerned about people showing up at 5:30 for this?
For the Weblocker?
Yeah.
I'm not overly concerned about that.
I think we should still, at 5:30, have the public comment period if there's
Absolutely.
anyone that wants to comment.
Perfect.
We don't end it early.
Yep.
Just move this one up, and if we have to then take a break for...
Adam, you can do this?
You bet.
Okay, you've got 22 minutes or less.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Adam Fulton, Facilities Director. About 6 weeks ago, the Commission asked staff to consider and analyze putting a pitched roof on Blaine Weblocker 3, the building that greets our public as they enter into Blaine Harbor. Staff is currently stopped on design, awaiting direction based on what the Commission decides today. The question I will be asking at the end of this brief presentation is whether the Commission would like us to pursue the pitched roof and increase the budget approximately $140,000, or if the Commission would prefer that we stay with the flat roof solution that is in the budget. This is Weblocker 3 in Blaine. You can see this is the road to the boat launch. This is our main marine drive in. A little bit interestingly, the Weblocker was originally constructed with a medium density MDO particle board, which has kind of a waxy film on it, and the paint just would never stick to it. So there's been a lot of speculation on why the paint has never stuck, but I do think it was the substrate that is the culprit. In any event, the building has never looked very good. It's very at the presentation to the harbor, mainly because the paint has always just been so poor.
Adam, I'd like to thank you for sending your presentation ahead to me. It helps here because I'm lagging behind on the YouTube as with what you sent me, your PowerPoint. It keeps you right up to date with you. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Commissioner. These are the two options being considered. This would be an end view the view essentially that would greet the public as they drive on Marine Drive entering the harbor. The option 1 above is what is in the budget now. There's actually 2 things happening to this web locker. One is the replacement of the siding, and the other is the replacement of the roof. What you see here, obviously not colored up, is a metal siding with a waistband up here, and then a different treatment yet to be decided up on the high end of the roof. Same thing here, a metal siding, a waistband, and then a different architectural treatment up in the gable. Just something to give the building some interest. So these are the 2 options. It's option 1 that is budgeted for in our 2016 capital improvement budget. This would be a rendering of what the building would look like if a pitched roof were applied, and that is a reasonable approximation of the color scheme that we'd be aiming at, whether it has a flat roof or a pitched roof. In option 1 with the flat roof, you can see costs approximately $48,000. That's, I believe there was some technical questions. That is a tear off of the existing roof and then a reapplication or a new application of what's called a thermoplastic polyolefin roof, TPO roofing, which we've used on a few of our different buildings around the port. It's a fantastic technology and a very solid roof. And then option 2 is the pitched roof analysis, and that's, as you can see, about $160,000. Looking back, it's about a net difference of about $110,000. However, there would be some engineering involved with the trusses to make the pitched roof. That is the end of the analysis and consideration. Again, the staff is essentially stopped at this point until we have direction from the commission on which option it would like us to pursue. And again, I would suggest a difference being approximately $140,000 between the 2 options. Option 1 being the flat roof that is in the budget now, no budget amendment is needed, or the increase to the budget to go to this pitched roof. Do the commissioners have any questions?
All right, let's start with you, Commissioner Briscoe.
A couple of questions, Adam. You just said there was a $140,000 difference to the budget if we went with the peaked roof. I'm a little confused because we've got 159 and 47, so that's only about 112.
Yeah, the commissioner is correct. There would be There would be an engineering effort involved with the creation of the trusses, and potentially structural impacts to the building. But I think it would just be engineering of the trusses themselves.
Okay, so that's not included in the pitch roof cost.
The commissioner is correct.
Okay. The other question I had is between the flat roof and the peaked roof for longevity into the next 50, 60 years, what are the estimated repair costs to the flat roof versus the repair costs to the pitched roof?
Yeah, it's a very good question. We don't tend to do a lot of life cycle analysis and to provide you a number that is calculated. We do know that the TPO roofing is definitely a 30 or 40-year roof. We are putting it on several buildings around the port, and it's a proven product. On the pitched roof is a metal skin roof, and those also have a very long life to them. So I think either one of these roof solutions is easily 30 to 40 years, which I'd be very comfortable stating.
Okay, thank you, Adam.
Adam,
Commissioner McCullough.
we're going to do the roof and the siding at the same time?
The commissioner is correct.
Okay. I would tend to go with the flat roof from the standpoint that we're putting a lot of money into Blaine, and we're actually having a decrease in moorage up there. I'm not sure I want to put, if we can do it and that's going to have the same longevity, I would be in favor of going with a flat roof.
So I like the idea of the metal roof. the latest research I've seen on metal roofs is that with a modern roof that's painted, and it looks like this would be painted with the Galvalume substrate, should last over 100 years, which also brings up the point that Commissioner Robbins just made. We have a lot of investments being made, but also, is this building going to be there in 100 years? I don't think this building will be there in 100 years. So where I would normally say, let's go with the longest term solution possible, in this case, I might not be willing to spend the extra money. I'm doing a quick search here to see if you can recycle the TPO, and I think you can. So it's, because the steel can be recycled quite easily at the end of its life. So, yeah, I don't think I'd have an issue with sticking with the flat roof with the TPO. Commissioner Briscoe, did we lose you?
Yeah, no, they for some reason I got cut off, but we're back.
Oh, okay. So today are you searching for the roof question?
I am.
Okay, and then the siding question, is there a siding question at all?
Not. The only question in front of the commission today is whether we would want to go to a pitched roof and increase the budget or remain with the flat roof.
Yeah. Commissioner Briscoe, any thoughts on that one particular?
Yeah, well, if the longevity was my question, if we were going to have to do this thing every 20 years at the tune of $30,000 or $40,000, and it would seem to me to go with a different roof. But I also agree with Commissioner Robbins and Commissioner McCauley that we have a lot of things going on up there, and it seems that Adam has clarified for me that this particular type of roof has the TPO membrane has some longevity to it. So I would be in favor of the flat roof.
So my recycling question is answered. It turns out, yes, if there is a company available in 30 years, this thing could be recycled. But it's also the same problem that we've got with, say, asphalt roofing, the shingles on typical roof. Yeah, they can be easily recycled, except nobody does it here, so it's kind of a catch-22. But all right, so some direction forward. I guess we're going to stick with a flat roof TPO version. What color are we looking at this time? I think we put some gray ones on over in Fairhaven.
They come in two colors, gray or white. I believe we're going with the gray on this one. It's not a visible roof.
Should we go with the white then? Get a little more reflectivity?
You sure could.
If we can't see it.
Just as easily, actually.
Yeah.
If the commissioner would prefer white, we can put a white roof on it, you bet.
Well, there's a long conversation that nobody wants to have about that, but I think if you can't see it, white is preferable.
Yeah. The commissioner actually makes a good point, and that is that TPO roofing is thought to be a green product for exactly that reason, the heat reflectivity. In the case of an unheated web locker, it's where you're not too overly concerned about heat gain. It's a little less impacting.
On the building itself.
Correct.
Yeah.
One thing that I might point out on a metal roof, we put one on our shucking plant in our oyster company, and when the seagulls are dropping clams and oysters on top of that roof to break them open and you're working in there, it's a little noisy. Mm-hmm. But it is a good roof, but it is noisy, and a white one, they'll give them a better target than a gray one.
It'll reflect a little while longer.
Commissioner Robbins brings up a question to mind to me of how does the membrane roofing stand up to being bombarded by clamshells of 50, 60 feet in the air? Or I shouldn't say clamshells, clams, because that's how the seagulls break them home. They drop them on the roof and they drop them on the ground. How will this? Do we have any issues with this type roofing with that?
We don't. It's a heavy millage, and it's just such an improved technology in the last 20 years. It's a very matter of fact, one of its highest sell points is its durability.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I can tell you, Commissioner Briscoe, we come across this all the time at work, and they don't even ask us to do anything special. We don't have to take our shoes off, and most of the time, equipment on a roof just sits right on top of the finished roofing, which is amazing to me. But and you're going with the 60 mil. That's the heavy duty one. Yeah.
Commissioner's correct.
Right on. Anything further for you, Commissioner Briscoe? I know this was an issue that you wanted to explore. Are you good today?
Yep, Commissioner McCauley, I'm fine, thank you.
All right. Commissioner Robbins, anything further?
I'm fine
All
with it.
right, great. Okay. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate that.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
And we do have a few minutes before our 5:30, so let's recess for our break for 10 minutes. We'll be back at 5:30. Meeting, and we do start with public comment period, so if anybody wants to, anybody sign up?
No one has signed up for public comment?
Any public comment from anybody at all? All right, and we are going to start with the one item on our 5:30 time period, and it'll be something that's near and dear to a lot of locals' hearts.
Indeed.
But I do have one request that I hope you carry forward to those folks, that they can't have fancy glasses. They have to have like just a mug of beer.
We're going to have the right answer for you this afternoon.
Can you let them know that?
Yes.
Okay, I saw a local brewery with some fancy glasses today, and I was appalled. So. Let's see, this is an action.
So Mike, are you calling that girly beer glasses, or what are you saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Diane, we have an action here.
Yes, a motion by the Port Commission to approve a new lease between the Port of Bellingham and Pause for a Beer, LLC, for premises located at 501 Harris Avenue, Bellingham, Washington.
Thank you, Diane. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Steve Shipman presenting for the Real Estate Division this afternoon. Mr. Ryland Schoen's in the audience. Ryland, if you want to just put your hand up, thank you. This is Ryland's brainchild. He came to us earlier this spring and said, I've got this concept for a business where I would have a dog park and have people bring their dogs, or excuse me, a dog park and a tavern, dog park and a tavern. So there was some back and forth, and we've put together an agreement that hopefully the commission will approve this afternoon. This is in the old, or the former Washington Wind Sports or Board Sports building on Harris. I think most of you have known that. It's next to the Fairhaven Station. It's been there for a gazillion years. That's where the location of this is. It's a one-year lease with a one-year renewal option. Rents for the first year of the lease will be approximately $22,000, and if the second year is opted, it'll be about $45,000 for the 2-year rent. We'll stream on this arrangement. There's a couple of conditional things that have to happen here with Ryan. One is with the city, and one is connected to the lease. The city's going to require that an ADA-compatible restroom be installed within 6 months of occupancy. And the lease is also tied to that same condition, so there is going to be some pressure on Ryland to get that on board and get that installed soon. And then also, the city required, while they were going through the process of putting in the hard plumb restroom facility, that there would have to be some access to a hard plumb facility nearby. So we're asking the commission to allow Ryan and some of his customers to use the Fairhaven Station restrooms when needed. Most of that will be taken care of by portable restrooms and facility stations. And that's pretty much the gist of it, Commissioners. It'll be about, 2 to 3 employees, right, between yourself, right? So, and we'd like to open up for any questions you might have for Ryland or myself.
It's Ron?
Ryland.
Ryland. Did you have anything you wanted to share with us to start?
I mean, to address your... Hello? Can you hear me? All right. To address your concern about glasses, first and foremost, we will actually be serving cans and bottles only to begin with.
So no fancy glasses?
No fancy glasses. Perfect. You'll be drinking out of cans. We'll have koozies for you that'll have branding on them. And will be free to roam the entire property with your can of either beer, wine, kombucha, cider, whatever you choose.
Well, it's not a redneck party without a koozie, so
right.
I like it. Yeah. Commissioner Briscoe, you got any questions on this one?
Well, number one question would be, will there be beer dishes available for the dogs?
There will be. I hear there's dog beer somewhere for retail. You can buy it. I assume it's non-alcoholic. We probably will not carry O'Doul's, but okay. We may put some fresh hops in some water and call it hop water for dogs. I don't know.
Yeah, okay, very good. No, I just funning with you, but I do have a question. Is the plumbing on site in the on the grounds for the restrooms being installed, or does the sewer line have to be brought in, or how on that?
There is no plumbing available at all. It's all out in the street.
Okay.
So it'll be a full built-out sanitary sewer water connections with fixtures, everything to comply with a modern ADA compliant restroom.
Okay, so is the port responsible to bring that to the building, or
No, sir.
is this in? Okay,
No, that will all be on Ryan.
okay. That's all I have, Commissioner McCall.
So how did it, I always thought it was NWS, but everybody tells me it's WWS.
Yeah, it was Washington Wind Sports back. It began in 1982 or 83, and it was basically a windsurfing shop. And then over the years, it's morphed into the skateboard shop, right?
Yeah. I know they moved; they're not gone. How did they ever get away so long with not having a toilet?
According to local legend, it was the proximity to the Fairhaven station, okay, that allowed them to do that.
Weird.
Yeah.
There's also a statute in the city that states if you have less than 6 people on premises at a time, then you don't need restrooms as well, that I found. And I said, well, we'll have more than 6 people, so I guess we need restrooms.
I just always assumed retail locations had to have an employee toilet.
Yeah, I did too, Commissioner McCauley. I was surprised. I was surprised that that this business could happen there without any kind of plumbing. But that's the reason they're serving out of cans and bottles.
How much are you going to be spending on TIs to do this, tenant improvements?
The permits alone are going to be pushing us 16 grand, and then improvements on top of that. We will be painting the outside of the building and inside as well to begin with. We'll be putting up a fence. I don't have an exact number for you.
The bathroom
but
itself.
The bathroom itself is, it's not going to be cheap, but I think that we can start to raise that money immediately upon opening. So that's the plan at this point.
Well, I think it's great. I think the name of your company is great. You know, I was a little skeptical, and I've seen a lot of retail businesses, but the more people I talked to that thought it would be neat to have a beer and let their dog run around is great. Part of the reason and that I voted no on the earlier issue was, here you are at 12,000 square feet, and you're paying $22,000 a year, and you're doing something good for the public, albeit a private sector. But I wish you the best of luck, and I think it's great you're doing it, and I hope it all works out well for you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I think it's a super cool concept, and it will certainly bring more diversified activity down to that end of the street, which I know Rob and I, we've talked about this a lot, especially in regards to the cruise terminal. It's just, it's a cul-de-sac. Port of Bellingham owns a lot of cul-de-sacs, and it's hard to get people down there, and this is a part of the Fairhaven economy that just drags. So this is kind of cool that you're taking this step, and yeah, I'm sure I will go there, even though our dog doesn't run. We'll bring her.
Commissioner, you might find this interesting that, Rylan, you might mention your Kickstarter fund, how that worked out for you.
Oh yeah, we I don't know if you guys are familiar with Kickstarter crowdfunding. We launched a Kickstarter, I guess about 2 months ago now, and successfully funded $10,000 here in the city for the startup fund. It took us about a month to raise that, and that has gone into a lot of the startup costs.
And what do your crowdfunder folks get for their?
So the main aspect of the crowdfunding was to actually get memberships before we opened up. So dogs will be on membership basis to come in. Well, we open to the public, so anyone can come in at any time, but dogs will be on a membership basis. So depending on how often you show up, whether they buy a day pass, a month pass, or a year pass, you can show up as many times as you want. And so we were selling basically a lot of kind of 6-month and year-long memberships.
Just curious on the crowdfunding deal, and you don't need to answer this if you don't want to, but how many individual contributions were there?
We had just under 100 individual contributions.
And all of course, from Bellingham?
All from, Bellingham, the surrounding area, and then I've also gathered some other funds here and there.
So a membership,
Yeah.
can I show up, buy a beer, and have the membership added onto my tab? 'Cause I'm
Yeah, so
lazy, and I
we're,
don't like
we're gonna
paperwork.
we're gonna run. Have you guys been to Vital at all, the climbing gym, or kind of near it? Basically, when you walk in, you have a place to sign in. So kind of like when you walk into a gym, you'll have we'll have a little kiosk that you can sign in. If you it's going to be about $10 a month for membership. So it's not an exorbitant cost, but that'll allow us to really control the dog park and keep it clean and have some nice things in there for the dogs to play around in. But the membership will be separate from the beer tab. I guess, I don't know, does that answer your question?
Well, yeah, it's a super clever idea, because I keep seeing things pop up. The first one was Elizabeth Station, and I used to live in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Is everybody familiar with Elizabeth Station, right? I saw that go in, I was like, they're out of their minds. They have cereal in a bar.
Right.
Right? And it's packed.
Yeah.
And you can only buy 3 beers.
Right.
Like, I was like, how is this ever going to work? And they blew up. It's
Yeah.
crazy. And then Culshan, where they made you sit outside in the rain to drink your beer, and they had no food, really? And they blew up. So this is a cool concept.
Yeah, so along those same lines, we will have food trucks actually down in Fairhaven as well. We'll run food trucks off the little driveway pad that's there. They'll be outside the alcohol boundary, so they can run without needing to be part of health code or food code.
See, this is getting better and better.
Oh, it's exciting.
Wow.
And then we'll also have 6-packs to go. We'll have a off-premise exemption to sell 6-packs, so you can come down, have a beer, let your dog run around, and then take 6 to go with you, hopefully.
Super cool. All right. Commissioner Briscoe, you've been pretty quiet. Do you want to jump in on anything here? Commissioner Briscoe? Commissioner?
Yep, there we go. Yeah, the airplane's flying by. I have to mute. Sorry. I'd like to wish Mr. Schoen the best in his endeavors here. I hope he's successful. I think it's a good idea.
All right. We'll all go down there when you get back.
Well, one thing I would like to ask, though, is if you get inebriated, they have a designated dog to take you home.
A homing dog? I love that.
We'll work on a triple D, designated driving dog.
Awesome. Anything further? No. Okay. We are taking an action on this lease. This looks exciting and interesting and new, so I think we're all behind it. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Super cool. Good luck. That is it on our regular agenda. Anything that you needed to add on this one? All right. So anything, new business, Commissioner Robbins? Any new business, Commissioner Briscoe?
No, not today.
Okay. All right. Senior staff, Rob, nobody? Anybody? Any members of the public? Not a lot of you folks, but all right. With that, we are adjourned, and we'll see you next month.